ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Hey there, this is Matt Petrowski for ISO FileMaker Magazine. You can find me over at FileMakerMagazine.com. If you have been collecting data or you need to know how to collect data, whether it's for a web viewer or whatever you need to collect data for across related data, that's what this video is going to be about. Let's head to my desktop, take a look at the file. All right, thanks for joining me here. As you can see, the file that we have, this is going to be one of the most simple examples. In fact, I'll go into the defined database. We will switch to the relationships. We will take a look. I am just doing this for the purpose of anyone who is not familiar with a standard join table situation. So in this example, I have a project, or in this case, multiple projects. I could have called this plural. I have tools that are going to be used for that project. Now, one of the most common problems that a new FileMaker developer will do is they will directly connect their tools to their project, not recognizing that the tools themselves stand out as their own entity, because for any given tool, you're going to be able to use that across multiple projects. And because of that, it dictates that you have a join table. So while it doesn't obviously make sense right off the bat, your project has requirements for tools. Hence, I named the join table requirements. It's just an easy way to think about a join table. So in that join table, you, of course, are going to have basically just a collection of IDs. No data whatsoever. A lot of join tables, they will sometimes have ancillary data, but they are mostly a collection of keys joining multiple tables. So here we have our project, here we have our tools. In our tools, we have categories, material, or we have the tool name, we have the tool category, we have the tool material, like what does this tool actually work with? Maybe it works with multiple materials. And what is the usage of the tool? So after we've covered that, our whole goal is to understand that in this portal, where I'm able to make a selection, and then from that selection, I can choose from all of the different possible tools to add to this project. So far, for this workbench project, I need a chisel, I need a drill. Let's pick something else that I need. We will pick, let's say, for example, a circular saw in order to cut the wood. All right, so once we've got this collection of data, our goal many times is to collect this data for output. But what becomes difficult for us as we open up and look at our defined database is we're on a layout based on the highlighted table occurrence right now. How can we cycle through the portal, which is our requirements, and then how can we collect all of the individual tools? All of the data, the name of the tool, the category, material, usage, is all in this file. Well, it's a really simple thing to do. We are going to be using, and if you didn't catch it, it's over in the description, we are going to be using a combination of the while function and the getInth record. Now, if you've never used the getInth record, is the magic key to being able to extract the data that you want. And throughout the remainder of this video, what we're going to be doing is talking about the multiple ways that you might want to extract the format that you would put it in. JSON is one of them. Very important to know JSON in modern FileMaker development. But our goal is this. I have a button right here that says gather data. And down here in this instructions area, we are pretending that we are collecting it. In this case, we might have, actual instructions. First, start off by doing, blah, 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 whatever it is. And then we want to inject into this point collected data. Now, this happens in all kinds of different places in FileMaker development. You can use a web viewer, and you need to collect data in the format of HTML. You have web viewers, and maybe you want to collect data in the format of JSON so that it can be used with JavaScript. And you can use these really cool JavaScript libraries like Sortable and be able to drag and reorder things. You might also want to use a web viewer for the purpose of output. You also might want to put this simply into a Word document, into an Excel spreadsheet that you're going to export. Whatever it is, you need to be able to collect the data, and you're going to do it using those two functions. So I click the button here, and you can see that what it did is it collected the name, put in a long dash, and then it has each of the areas, such as the category, the material, and the usage, and it has them all separated with slashes. Now, we can completely change this up, and that's what we're going to be learning in the remainder of this video. So you find yourself asking the question, where should you host your FileMaker solution? Well, one of those dots right there. That's what I would pick. Now, they didn't come to me. I went to them, and I trust fmcloud.fm with all of my data. They are using the latest tech. In fact, did you know Claris is actually, in some instances, releasing features first and only for Linux. What does fmcloud.fm use? They use Linux. On top of that, they use containerization. And if you've not heard about containerization, then you will be. It's one of the best ways to host your FileMaker solution. I highly suggest that you check out fmcloud.fm. All right, so if you are a subscriber, then you already know that you can go to the magazine website and gather or get this file and be able to follow along. As I open up this scripting workspace with Command-Shift-S, everything that you need code-wise, it's basically one little snippet, and it's right here. I've got it named raw data. So in this script that I have in this file, which if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to go to the link down below, and it will take you to the magazine website. If you like learning about FileMaker and really improving your FileMaker solutions, a subscription is very minimal. You can get that over at FileMakerMagazine.com. But what we're taking a look at is the while function. Now, before I jump into this, in fact, I can go ahead, I'll double click, we'll bring it up, and I'll show it for you. We'll actually go into the specify, look at the syntax highlighting, which is compliments of the Monkey Bread plugin, by the way. We are going to build this solution, or we're going to build this custom function here in this video. It's always easy to simply just copy and paste. And in fact, in this AI world, you can have AI write code for you. If you're good enough at writing a prompt in ChatGPT and you tell AI, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini now, any of those tools, if you tell them, write me a while function that uses getInthRecord to grab 3 pieces of data, you might be able to get that. In fact, I'll probably go do that here at one of the pauses between the time that I'm shooting this video. But here is the key with AI. AI is not the creative aspect of implementing software. AI can only directly generate code. So you need to know how to actually compose the code and how the code functions in order to get the result that you want. Because many times, if you can't troubleshoot or work with AI and be able to revise and build your prompts in order to get the result that you want, it doesn't matter if you know AI or how to use AI. So we are going to go through this the exact same way that I do when I'm developing something. So the key thing in FileMaker is be in the context that you are working with in terms of your data. So at this point in time, in my managed database, I am on a layout. It is based on project. I have it connected to my requirements. This is the portal. It is showing this information, but we are going to collect the information from this table called tools. Now, if we do this, we're going to, most of the time, you are going to be using the data viewer. In fact, any good FileMaker developer knows that the best and easiest place to build your functions is in a watch variable while you're in the context of the data that you're trying to work with. Then you just take what you have from your watch variable and go put it into your script. Rarely am I ever just right off the bat writing a script, although I will show you a tool or a way to do this completely within the script. But what we're going to do is we're going to click the plus, and we are now in this expression. Now, the first thing I will say is when I'm composing the code, I have shortcuts that I use. I'm going to type in fm while-i. Now that expansion does not exist in your copy of FileMaker. That's not something that's built into FileMaker. That is a tool that is called Typinator. And I'll probably put a link in the YouTube description. It'll be on the article. It'll link to it, and you can go to get information about Typinator. It's just an expansion tool, but it goes way beyond just making expansions. Because if I type in fm collect, you can see that I'm getting another variation of the while function, which is great and all. I can give you, this code. You can put it into your own snippets, but it doesn't teach you how to use it. So let's type in fm, or I will type in fm while-i, and we will break this down, and we will compare this because the while function can be confusing. Let me put in a normal while. This is how FileMaker actually expands it out. And this, in my opinion, is not a convenient way to work with the while function. It's got initial variable, it's got condition, it's got your logic, and then it's got a result. So we're going to break down how we put this, and I'm going to comment this out so that my code will still work. We will move this off to the side, and we will build this as we go along, looking at the results. Now here in this is a FileMaker's calculation engine, but we're in a watch variable. What we get to do is we get to automatically evaluate the code, which is really nice because it allows us to see the results as we are actually working. So we'll move this off to the side. Number one, this is boilerplate code that you want to use. You want to have this code available. The first thing that we've done to the while function is we've taken this initial variable and we have put it onto multiple lines. It is vastly easier to do this with the while function. We have also taken the logic portion and we've also put it on multiple lines. And then the condition, this is actually, it says condition, which is very generic, but it should say exit condition is what it actually is. So I'm going to leave that there. So whatever is in this portion, that is between these two brackets. So these are our initial variables. This is our exit condition right here. And then here is all of our logic. And then finally, we have our result. So the result right here, and I'll go ahead and indent that. The reason that I have it unindented is because it doesn't get in line with these values and doesn't actually confuse me. But all this is code formatting right now. We are just simply applying some formatting that makes it easier for us. So first, let's talk about the opening while. The opening while says, what are all of your initial values? And one of the most important initial values is, what are we going to end up with? Now, we're going to see this in another example where one of the things that we might end up with would be an object. So if we are going to deal with whether it's a simple list of items or whether it is a complex set of JSON, we want to end up or initialize some potential result. So that's what we have right here. In this particular example, anytime you're dealing with a sequence of data where you are going to need to get something from potentially multiple places, and in this case, when I'm referring to multiple places, I'm talking about multiple fields. I have 3, maybe 4 that I want to get information from. You are almost always going to have an iterator, and that's what I stands for. It's goes back a long time ago to conventional days where you'd have, they didn't use as many characters, and they would have, they started with I because it was iterator, and then they just went sequentially. So it would be I, J, and then you would have another iterator called K. And that was simply because they didn't really have, or they tried to work within a minimal amount of memory space. So if it makes more sense to you, you can call this iterator if you need to understand more about what's going on. For me, I'm just used to I. I is iterator. That's just what it is to me. We can always initialize this to whatever we want. You can start on 1, but in order to increment this, you can see that we're already doing this. So if we actually accidentally put 1 on this, and we started at 1 thinking 1 is what we want, what would happen is the very first value would end up equaling 2, because that's 1 plus 1 would be 2. So we almost always in FileMaker want to start with 0, knowing that we are going to do our incrementation right there. Now, in the rest of the programming world, what you're going to see a lot of the times is you're going to see I++, something that is a shortcut for what we're doing right here, which is just the mathematical incrementation of the value. I think that's pretty obvious. So the one thing that we're missing here is we are missing our exit condition. We do not have a full exit condition. My template comes out and says I is less than, or in this case, my result, or whatever I'm counting up to, is going to be greater than I. Or so long as it's greater than I, we're going to keep running everything that's in the logic portion. It's everything that's right here. So what we can do is we can initialize this with whatever we want. We could put in, let's say I'm going to do 3 items. Now you saw that this populated right there. If I put 5, if I put 6, the calculation code is valid right now. It is literally set up to simply take the result of whatever you have and append it. It's doing that with this list function. Now, if I wanted the reverse of this, I simply have to reverse these 2 values. This list function is basically a combiner. It combines 2 values. So if I simply take the I right here and I put the I in front, look I get 3, 2, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3. Now that's a pretty cool thing to know, that all I have to do is simply rearrange things. In fact, in code, a lot of the times, things are about rearranging things. So what I need to get first is I need to get however many items there are across my relationship. Now, without exiting this dialog box, I know that my context currently has that portal with however many items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new initial variable, and that is going to be counter, or the count of something. So I'm going to say count, and what am I going to use? Well, FileMaker has a count function, which we can absolutely use. Now here's where things get a little bit tricky. For you, you may be thinking, okay, I'm counting however many tools there are. A chisel, drill, saw. So you may be thinking, oh, I need to go to count, and I'm going to switch to the tools table occurrence. That is not what we are counting. We are counting the number of join records that join between project and tools, the requirements. It's the required tools for this project. So we are going to go to our requirements, and then the easiest thing to count is the ID. So if we click that in and we've got our requirements ID, we're now going to say that we are going to iterate from 1 to count. And I put in something here. Well, I didn't add my colon. You can always see whenever you're getting table missing, something is up with your code, and eventually you get to the point where you just know when you're missing trailing semicolons or not. So there you can see that I've got a count of my requirements. Now, do I have 3 items? Yes, in fact, I do. 1, 2, and 3. So that gives me exactly what I need right there. All right, I've got the 3 items. Now all I have to do is use the second part to this whole equation, which is the get nth record. We understand what the while is doing, and it's iterating across each of my portal rows. This right here is what's getting all of the portal row items. Now, there are other ways. Let me show you. One of the most common is to use value count and to actually count a list of something. Now, here's the problem, though. We must remember the list function removes or collapses empty or missing records. So I've done this myself in the past, where I'll do, I'm going to do a list of something. And what we can list is, let me paste that in, and we'll take the count function off here, because you'll see that we get the exact same thing. There we're getting it, 1, 2, and 3 again. So this is essentially the same thing as the count function. It's just a different way of getting it. In this case, I know that my database, every single ID field will absolutely have a value. In fact, it's a constraint that I make it that my database cannot not have a ID value. So this is a very safe thing to do. But if I was to put in requirements and use the name field, or the name field doesn't actually exist. In fact, the requirements only has key values. But there are times where, let's say, for example, we'll use this as an example. You will use this particular situation using the value count on a list of something, but if you do it on a field where that field can potentially have an empty value, you will get nothing. The list function will collapse it down and it will literally disappear. This is where you get disjointed lists that don't work the way that you want to have them happen, which is why the get nth record is the better way to approach this. So I'm going to go for the simple version, just paste that in, the requirements or the count. And we are now going to create all of our logic. Now, in our logic, we can see anything within the context of this. Meaning, I'm on projects, I am on this table occurrence of projects, and project can see all of the table rows from requirements. It can also see all of the matching rows in tools. So we are going to be able to get that information. So we're going to literally just pull out exactly what we want, and we're going to name variables exactly the same. So name is going to equal get nth record. It's right there. And it only expects a field and a record number. Now, because this is in a while function, it's a loop. And because I have an iterator, I am going to be able to use that iterator right within here. Let me put a trailing semicolon. And now what field do I want to get? Well, remember, we are looking at the portal that is the requirements, but nothing stops us from going all the way over to the tools. So we'll simply just go to tools. We will say, what do we want? We will say we want the name, and look at that. We are getting a result. And all we have to do to see that result now is simply put it into our result variable within the context of our logic. So let's just add the name. And look at that. We now get chisel, drill, and circular saw. And it turns out that FileMaker does indeed return them according to the order in which the records are presented. Well, actually, that's not true. It is possible to put a sort on this portal. In fact, if I did put a sort on this portal, and that's by double-clicking the portal, and then the portal has a calculation or has an option to set the sort for the portal. That sort in particular only does it for the display of the portal. It does not affect the data. The data and the order in which it's returned, meaning this data right here, is fully controlled by the relationship. And there's two places you can sort. You can put a sort on the relationship, which, if you have a lot of data, can be a bit of a performance impact. Many times, there are other ways to sort data that may be better than putting the sort on the relationship. If you don't always need the relationship to be sorted in a specific order, don't put it on the relationship. Use FileMaker's other functions, such as, we'll say to return right here, sort values right there. This would allow you to sort the values in the order that you want them. You would be able to sort the data. So with that now, you should have the general idea that we can build whatever we want to build. And I'm simply just going to go grab the calculation, and we're just going to learn one little trick about it. And then we're going to move on to taking a look at JSON. All right, after a quick little copy going into the script and then grabbing that code, we can take a look at what we have. Let me zoom in a little bit there so we can see things. All right, actually, it was probably better before, wasn't it? There we go. So what we are interested in is we are interested in very tight code, meaning we really don't want to repeat things if we don't have to. And for the most part, everything that we see on screen is tight and effective code. We are using the while function. We are cycling across our portal, which is our requirements portal, our join table, which is looking into our table one table away from the actual context we're in, which is projects. We are getting the name, we are getting the category, we are getting the material and the usage, all of the individual pieces. And if any one of these is an empty field, It doesn't matter. It won't get messed up because every one of these is pulling based on the get nth record based on the iteration that we were on, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. We get to create whatever string we want. And in this string, you can see that I am simply using something that is repeated. So if I want a bullet character, you can see that I can change that here. I can put in whatever I want to put and get whatever result I want using FileMaker's calculation engine. But in this case, if I was to, say, for example, want to use the pipe character, and now I have to go do this pipe character, the only thing that I want to show you here is that it is much easier whenever you see duplication in your code. This is what makes you become a better FileMaker. Dry code, or do not repeat yourself, is much better. So by simply creating a little divider and then putting the slash character right here, and then down at the bottom, I can actually make this code a little bit easier to read. I can actually make this something very easy to modify. Divider right there. Now, I get this exact same result, but look how easy it is to change this now. I want the pipe, and it is the pipe. I want a bullet. It is so clean that I have now created code that is pretty much very easy to read. I mean, look at that. I'm collecting the name from the name field, category from category, usage, string. In fact, I might even take the time and make this super clean and put a divider line just for the purpose of clean reading code. It feels really good to have clean code. In my string, I'm going to simply combine that to my result. You already know how you could reverse the order if you wanted to. If on the end result you did want this sorted, all I would have to do is put that onto this. We'll put a sort values, and then we'll put that right there. Look at that. That's going to put the C's all in proper order. I would be able to put this in whatever format I want. So the only thing that we need to learn about now is what if we want to do this with JSON? That's what we're going to use as our last example, and then we're going to wrap this video up. Okay, so as promised, the last thing that I'm going to cover here in this video is working with JSON. Now, JSON is super prevalent. You're probably not going to be able to avoid it in FileMaker if you work anything with APIs outside, or if you choose to use it for passing parameters, etc., which is absolutely useful. So as we beg, borrow, and steal from our JSON right here, we're going to copy that code. Again, context, go ahead, save all. Context is already established right here. So anything we do into our data variables or our watch variables, data viewer, is going to be something that we can use. Let me put on a JSON format elements on this really quick so we can see the pretty print result, and we can actually take a look at this. All right. And we'll get a little bit more on screen right there. Make sure that I am blocking it, back it off a little bit right there. And I like to have this just a little bit to the side. All right, so same while function, but the only difference here is we are going to initialize to an object. Now, you have to be familiar with JSON in order to get it into the structure that you want, but in essence, an object can contain sub-objects, arrays, all kinds of different things. Whatever ending result you have that you need is really just up to you. Now, if I change this to an array, I'm going to get an error, as we can see right there at the bottom. I am mostly interested in an object in this particular case, and again, the structure is up to you. Same thing applies. Everything in the while is exactly the same. The only difference is our result being a composition of JSON, which is initialized to a JSON object, simply needs to build on itself, and that's where we're going to see this right here. So you are going to set the result. This is actually, the way that I think of this is my initial result, my new result, appending to my prior result. And so that's exactly what's happening right here. Each time the logic portion is looped through, we are setting a new result in order to ultimately return a final result. And this is the confusing part. is this right here. What do I use for JSON set element? Well, you need to supply the prior result. And unfortunately, I can't name this prior result because it has to be the same named variable. But that in essence is what's happening. Each time this result is updated with the result of JSON set element looking at the prior result, which is basically just the build onto itself. And that's the only confusing thing that I wanted to explain here. Everything else about how you get the data using the get nth record is up to you. In this particular case, you can see that I'm creating a variable, and rather than having the name, the material, and the usage individually, which you can keep that previous code where we have the raw code, you can very much have a variable named after each one of these things. It just really depends on how many times you're reusing it within your code. But here you can see I am simply just composing a new sub-object which is going to be assigned to a particular key. In this case, the key name is the tool name, and that's what's giving me the result right there. So you can see right here, the chisel is returning a sub-object of the category material in usage, and there it is right there. The category material in usage is right there matching what is put into the key of chisel, which in this case is this right here. And so that's all you need to know about the difference between JSON. You're simply going to be using the JSON set element, initializing to that instead of actually an empty set right there. You can see even an empty set, it will still work, but we're just going to do that so that we know that we're setting an actual JSON object, because FileMaker initially, the first time, it doesn't care. If FileMaker gets an empty set of quotes, it implies that it's going to use an object. That is the default object of the JSON set element function. But in essence, that's the only difference. Again, you can do whatever you want, get however many fields you want. They will all be correlated and give you the result that you want for whatever you're going to work with. And the closing remarks for this video is that the whatever you want to work with and whatever you want to have as an end result is unlimited. There are so many things you can do within a web viewer with JavaScript libraries for outputting from FileMaker directly as a PDF, or outputting from a web viewer using a PDF library to have the full styling capabilities of HTML. It's just infinite what you can do, and it's very empowering once you know how to use things like these tools while and get nth record. So, as always, I'd like to wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development, and until next time, happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.